The constant metronomic beat of the clock has led us inescapably to Imola. Now, when the date 1994 and the name of Imola are brought together, they combine to form nothing but black, sombre memories. The events of that race weekend, from the morning of April 28th, when the teams first assembled at the track, until the evening of Sunday, May the 1st, rest amongst motor racing's darkest times. It was a weekend of tragedy, despair and death. 10 years on, it may be that some viewers would prefer not to watch the coverage of these events. And if you feel in any way unsure, then I urge you to switch off your TV now. We cannot shy away from the fact that 3 very serious accidents happened. The events of Imola are a part of the sport's history. The aftermath of that horrible weekend would forever change the way Grand Prix cars are built and forever change the way the races themselves are conducted. We at Speed Channel feel it is only proper that the 1994 San Marino Grand Prix is correctly documented, and that, in our opinion, must include correct coverage of Ayrton Senna's fatal accident.
At top speed at the Variante Bassa, Barrichello leapt the curb, got into the tire wall and the fence, coming from 180 miles an hour to virtually 0 in a microsecond.
One of the more violent accidents I think I've ever seen. I was watching that in England and absolutely horrified.
He was knocked unconscious and says he has no memory of the incident.
I just remember saying, oops. It was something that I recall. I think, you know, as I crashed, my tape rewind. It was something that I don't go to the crash. I don't remember crashing. It's something that I just remember the oops. So it's something that the whole weekend itself is a little bit vague in my mind. It's something that I think I'm lucky actually with that, because otherwise, you know, if you feel the power of the impact is too bad. It's something that many people who have crashed maybe have the same experience. My tape really rewind, and I remember just the time that I entered the corner a little bit too fast, and that was the explanation.
Well, perhaps Barrichello is lucky that the weekend was just a vague memory. On Saturday in qualifying, Roland Ratzenberger, a rookie with the Simtek team from Austria, lost the front wing on his car at top speed over the old Gilles Villeneuve corner. He went into the wall nearly head-on and perished.
The exciting thing to me was JJ had stalled the car on the grid and put his hand in the air to signal that the car had stalled. But the Lotus was obviously blindsided by traffic and backmarkers at the start of the race, but the impact, the force of the impact was colossal. And I was just terrified there and then, because remember, by this time we'd had Ratzenberger's fatal accident. We were kind of well under a black cloud by this point anyway, and we'd had yet another big accident on the starting grid, and it was my guy.
I mentioned before that would become an issue. Here's our Peter Windsor.
I was talking to Max about this several years ago, Angelelli, and he was saying that when he was deployed, the safety car was when he was told to go out, within 2 laps, the brake pedal was basically going to the floor. He was going absolutely as quick as he could going. He knew that so far as the speed that he needed to be doing to keep anything like the right tyre temperature in the cars, it was nothing. And a couple of times Ayrton actually pulled up alongside him, his eyes as big as eggs, sort of making gestures, trying to tell him to go faster, because Ayrton knew that he was losing tyre temperature, losing tyre pressure, and there's going to be a massive problem with bottoming as a result.
Yeah, that tungsten skids underneath the car, but quite right, what we're talking about is following around with the safety car, and the temperatures begin to drop down in the tyres from about 200 degrees F. The pressures drop and that ride height drops a little more. And at this stage, all the cars were flat bottomed. So as soon as they were travelling on over any of the undulations on the track, it was really turning the car into a surfboard, taking a lot of the suspension.
The sheer size of the debris field tells you something about the hideous nature of the impact. And as we were to learn later, a wheel, perhaps that one flying through the air with the suspension attached, poked through the visor and ended the life of the great Senna.
Early in his career, Senna developed a reputation as a gifted but emotional driver, one whose ruthless commitment to winning made him less than popular as he worked his way up the racing ladder. Presented with a choice of teams in Formula One, he chose lowly Toleman, There, he planted the seeds of his future legend with an epic drive in the rain at Monaco in 1984. A year later, he jumped to Lotus, where he claimed his first victory in Portugal, once again in the wet, the ultimate test of driving skill. Senna's uncanny technical ability and his samurai-like commitment to victory made him a favorite at Honda, moving with the company to the McLaren team in 1988. It was there he won most of his 41 career victories, his all-time record 65 poles, and all 3 of his world championships. When Honda left Grand Prix racing in 1992, Senna spent one final frustrating season at McLaren before following the practice of champions, going back to Juan Manuel Fangio, find a seat in the best car on the grid. In 1994, that meant the Williams Renault. Statistically, Senna ranks among the greatest drivers of all time, but many, including drivers themselves, consider him to be the best. Part of it was his unyielding commitment to perfection. There was only winning. Anywhere but the top step of the podium was failure. He feuded with other drivers, both on and off the track, and he challenged the top officials and rules makers in Formula One, sometimes to his detriment. For Senna, there was simply no other way. Ayrton Senna was a presence, thoughtful but reckless, introspective but emotional, religious but competitive. He gave the sport a personality that has not been seen, a day of mourning that made headlines around the world. His pallbearers included former teammate Gerhard Berger and fellow world champions Alain Prost and Jackie Stewart. He was laid to rest in Morumbi Cemetery in Sao Paulo, and the sport of Grand Prix racing was changed forever.
It was a sad moment, sad weekend overall, you know, on the track, out of the track. You know, it took me such a while to actually be competitive in Imola. Not because I was afraid of myself, but just it was a heavy air. So I never really enjoyed that. So just hard to explain. There was a mystery going on that weekend. It looked like somebody was left a different button on, and everybody was just getting hurt.
Looking back, it's obviously very easy to say this shouldn't have happened, that shouldn't have happened. All one can do is put the pieces together and learn from that. And I think Formula One definitely has learned. It's incredibly, touch wood, safe now.
It comes a point where you have to take your hands off the car as the team and give it to one guy. And if that guy will make a difference, you'll work 24 hours a day, 3 days a week during the race weekend. It doesn't matter, because you know you're going to get the results. And that's what Senna was. Senna was both of those things to me. He was the competition, the guy to beat, and boy, we really wanted to have that competition with him. And we knew that Senna just had it. Senna was Formula One at the time, you know. He believed, you watch Senna on the podium, and he was very pleased to win the race, there's no doubt about that. But you look in his eyes, and he absolutely was just acknowledging the fact that the only true just result had happened. Ayrton Senna won the race. What did you expect to happen, you know? That's what Senna was. That's what made such a huge impact to the sport.
That could happen already had. We were proven wrong. Michele Alboreto lost a wheel on the Minardi at high speed in the pit lane, and the debris cut through the Benetton, Ferrari, and Lotus crews.
Yeah, the right rear wheel nut comes adrift. That flies into the Benetton pits, and then the wheel off Michele Alboreto's Minardi bounces through the Ferrari mechanics onto the Lotus mechanics. Nigel Stepney, my former mechanic, chief mechanic at Benetton, then chief mechanic with Ferrari, actually hit by Michele Alboreto's Minardi.
Yet another chapter in the long and horrifying weekend of the San Marino Grand Prix.
That was really the final straw that broke the camel's back, in a way. At that point, it was just, for God's sake, let this weekend stop. This is a living nightmare. Stop it now.
Welcome back to the 1994 San Marino Grand Prix, where once again the ambulances were called in, this time for an accident in which Michele Alboreto lost a wheel on his Minardi at speed in the pit lane and the loose wheel sighed through the pit crews at Benetton, Ferrari.
There was but one desire after the race, universal throughout the paddock, the desire to be at home, to leave Imola, to escape the curse that had clung to us, that had refused to yield. It had been relentless and we desperately wanted it to stop. I wrote in my diary of the time that I couldn't remember the trivialities of the actual race. I had no memory of refueling the car or changing the tyres. The footage shows we did, so I guess we must have done. Michael Schumacher had won the race. No one cared. The world was numb. Brazil declared a 3-day period of mourning. His body returned home. Ayrton Senna was given a state funeral and he was laid to rest in the lush green cemetery of Morumbi. Along with some of my colleagues, I visited him the following year when we assembled for the Brazilian Grand Prix. He has a peaceful spot. The high ground of the cemetery commands a clear view across his hometown of Sao Paulo spread out below. Ayrton died doing what he did best, driving hard, leading the Grand Prix, heading to another victory. Now, over the years, it had become a Senna trademark to wave his country's flag on his victory lap. And at Imola, inside the shattered remains of his Williams, the marshals did indeed discover a flag. This flag, however, was not the distinctive green and yellow of Brazil. It was red and white. On winning the race, Ayrton planned to hold aloft the colours of Austria, a tribute from the sport's elder statesman intended to honour the memory of the young Roland Ratzenberger who had been killed the day before.